Welcome to the DevReady Podcast, where we're helping non-techs deliver better tech. Today, we've got a special guest, a favourite of mine, back from episode 14. Neville Christie is joining us today. It's been a little while, Neville. I think we recorded our last episode
Yes,
almost 2
that was
years
a
ago.
long time ago. Yes, wasn't
Yes,
it?
it was. It feels
It
like
was.
a long way ago. During COVID, we were locked down and we had that chat, so it was actually quite a bit of fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
if anyone wants to listen to the background of Neville, and there's a bit of context in there, his background, his story, how he started at a very young age due to necessities, selling and starting businesses, became a bit of a loan shark in a young age too. So it was a fascinating story and listen. So definitely recommend going back and having a look at episode 14. Today we've got Neville back, and I've known Neville quite a little while now. He's been a bit of a mentor to us, and been connected for a number of years now, since that podcast actually, and the first introduction.
Yeah.
But I've known Neville as a sort of pragmatic thinking, innovative, entrepreneurial, been involved in many, many businesses and different ventures. But the one thing I really enjoy about Neville is his focus on community and how he brings people together and build businesses collaboratively. And I think that's one of the key takeaways. A good example, Neville, I know you're, I believe, in the 80s. I won't say exactly your age, but you can do that.
Mine are 81 at the moment. Yes.
There you go. And
But going on 18, really, yes.
yeah, brilliant, Neville. And it's still innovating, right? So being a part of like
Yes.
a crypto blockchain company, for example, which some people in their 80s are doing absolutely nothing, and Neville just shines a bit of a light on what's possible. So Neville, thanks again for joining us, and that's a bit of an intro, but I really appreciate you jumping on. So from one of the key things I've been discussing a little bit around, and one of the things I'm reading a lot from you is all about the disasters that have been thrown at the world, and all the events you've been predicting, and love to dig in a little bit there to begin as to where that all stemmed from and how that sort of came to you in terms of your predictions around things like wars and all these things that are sort of happening around us. Where did that all start?
Well, excuse me. Sorry, Andrew. As you know, I've been entrepreneuring since I was 12, so I've had 69 years of innovating, entrepreneuring and researching. And during that time, I've always found that the biggest problems in the world are the source of the greatest opportunities. So in 2018, I sat down and spent a lot of time researching the real trends that were occurring around the world, the social, technological, ecological, economic and political trends. And I started to realise that there was a massive series of structural changes occurring, partly, of course, kicked off by the changes in our ecology with the, global warming, etc., but also because of some huge changes coming through in the biosciences and particularly in the whole artificial intelligence, robotics, automation of the service industry. So the more I dug, I came up with two quite strong conclusions. The first is that this decade, and I'm going back, to 2018, 5 years ago, that this decade we would find huge structural changes to our social, technological, ecological, economic and political fabric, our steep fabric. And that secondly, as a result of that, most nations would experience what I call 40 tsunami-like events. These would be things like pandemics, financial crises, a war, changes in the structural supply chains across the world, crisis between China and America, a crisis within America becoming the divided states of America. So the more I mapped these, the more I could see that this would be a period of great disruption and therefore also a decade of great opportunity. So out of that, a team of us, I actually took a whole year off sabbatical last year. I went through and closed down nearly all of my existing businesses, started to circulate my clothes to other people, my books, and started to metaphorically look like I could walk onto a plane with just a suitcase and a carry-on bag. And out of that,
what inspired you to do that, Neville?
Well, I've always been a person who reinvents myself every 3 years, which is why at any one time I'm typically doing at least 7 quite different things, and at least, involved in at least 7 quite different sorts of businesses. So I just felt that the times are changing so much that really the past is a dead country, and that if we continue to live in that past, expect that it'll go back to the pre-COVID, pre-global warming times, we've got rots in our head, and that there is a real need for us to reinvent ourselves, reinvent our businesses, reinvent our way of life, reinvent our relationships, reinvent our businesses and institutions. So I put my money where my mouth was, and took the time off to really invent 16 different programs that would help create what I've called the new steep renaissance. So we have to ride the tsunamis, we have to make the transformations, and then we have to be ready to create or play a part in the new steep renaissance. And a lot of that is going to be based on technology, and also what I call orgware, which is like people like you and me and many other service professionals. We've got in our heads many of the know-how and systems and processes of being able to make the changes to ourselves, make the changes to our businesses, and then make the changes to our total global environment, our steep environment. But many of us have not got that productized and monetized. It's in our heads, and we provide services, but we give away our best shots, our intellectual property, for nothing. And with robots and with artificial intelligence now dominating, and I think that's going to be that whole sensor technology, internet, robots, productization of the service industry. That's a new infrastructure technology that is going to dominate increasingly this decade. So all of that said, look, we better get our asses into gear. We better change our own mindsets and thinking, and start being part of the new renaissance.
It's moving that quickly. It's not
That's
funny
amazing.
anymore. Oh, it is.
Look, I'm 81 and I've got nowhere near the technology understanding you guys have got. But I've just been dipping into various forms of artificial intelligence. That can
What have you been dipping
articles.
into? Been playing with Chat GPT, as everyone has been.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Just playing around and saying, my God, this stuff is incredible.
It is incredible. I've actually been starting to use it in the way I deliver what we're doing. I find it quite fascinating. Right. If I'm doing a bit of market research, I'll go there first now. Instead of Googling and opening 25 pages, I'll ask some questions there, get some context of an industry I know absolutely nothing about.
Google's starting to get a real run for its money, isn't it?
Yeah, for me it is.
Everything online it's a big problem for Google.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. But I honestly think there's a huger problem. Like we've seen how, for example, in the legal profession, that a lot of their documents are now online, and you don't have to pay 10 grand to them to do a document. You just go on. We've seen with the accounting professions how Xero and whatever have revolutionised their role and changed it. We're seeing in the health services how I had a friend the other day who had to have surgery on his prostate, and he said to the doctor, "I don't trust you, I trust the robot." And the robot did it, and he emerged with his manhood intact, like every form of the service industries, and that includes yours and mine. And
it does. It includes every one of our service industries. That's right.
The robots are taking over. So, we can fight it or pretend it's not going to happen, or we can run with it.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating the way it's playing out, and it's impacting service, content, like that area. It's impacted quicker. So if you look at like the robots, have been building robots that can walk around and start moving, but those cost a lot of money. Software's always cheap, right? Or cheaper. It's still expensive. What's it cost to run ChatGPT every day, Anth? It's like millions, isn't it?
It was $3 million a day a few weeks
Yeah.
ago, but now they're getting outages, so they're hitting that capacity.
Yeah, they're hitting capacity. So it's
There are outages and introducing that paid tier, which will then
but
try and cover.
$3 million a day to deliver what it's delivering. I'm not sure how many people are using it, but I think it was the quickest thing to click over 1 million users compared to everything else. So software is always the quickest way to get to people. When you
But I mean, it's interesting to me how
They didn't even want to release it.
Yeah.
Have you heard the chats from the CEO?
No, I haven't.
He thought they didn't want to release it. He thought it wasn't going to do anything for anyone.
You're kidding. Oh, wow.
No, that was the whole thing. Yeah, they were very hesitant to put it out there because they're like, no one's going to use it.
Interesting.
yes, well, how wrong can you be?
Yes. We all can be wrong. So dig in a bit more about the steep renaissance, what that means to you, because I know you mentioned you've been developing different programs and thinking, and a couple of things we've touched on is how we might connect like-minded people that are more growth-orientated business people in services to maybe start productizing some of their thinking or start establishing different products. Tell us a bit about what you're doing in the background to bring some of that to market.
Sure. Well, I think the first thing that is required and what we're working on is how to change mindsets. Like, we're all the victims of our past and what we've learned and what we've done. But what's happening now, and we saw it with the internet, how much change. I remember many years ago, before the internet really started to take off, I remember sitting at the Australian Institute of Management, and I was running a seminar with 30 chief executives. And I said to them, guys, I've got something really strong to advise you. That is, you need to learn to type, because in 5 years' time, you will all be doing your own typing, and you probably won't have a personal assistant. And they all, almost swore at me. What the hell do you think you're saying? Well, of course, can you imagine a CEO or a medico or anybody today who isn't online doing their own typing, and their personal assistant tends to be online. So first of all, like, what's happening requires a major mindset. So we're developing some programs to actually start that whole process of changing the mindsets. Secondly, what's lying ahead as our jobs are restructured and we need new insights and new skills and new ways of being in the world. We've developed programs that are about reskilling those of us who, have got years and years of doing things a certain way, and now we've got to unlearn that and relearn some new skills. As you've said, we see that in the past businesses have been about creating customers. Now it's very clear that businesses, are about innovating collaboratively rather than solely, joining together, and businesses are about creating and serving communities. So that's a big shift. And so, as you said, what we do is working through a lot of our programs in groups, build those communities, build the collaborative innovation, and provide the tools that's possible. And you're being involved with me in building, a turnkey website that we can use multiple times. The other big shift is when most of us think of innovation, I think what we think of is mainly services, products, and technology. And if you think about those, apart from software, those innovations have been sort of, concrete. The biggest innovation, I believe now, and that's what we're working on, is what I'm calling orgware. And that is systems and processes and tools and technology and know-how that can bring about transformation of us as individuals. So we emerge differently, and systems, processes, tools, technology, software, ideas that make it possible to change the nature and essence of our business, the structure of it, our institutions, the way we relate to people. And a simple example of all this is just when COVID came and the lockdowns came. So look how many things just moved differently. Zoom had been around.
Everything changed. Yes.
Everything changed. And I'm calling that orgware, like the structural, the thinking, the tools and processes we adopted suddenly and quickly was a totally different way of organising our life, the way we are, the way we structure things. And that's one of the things that we're working on very solidly.
I think digging a little bit more around the mindset, from a mindset perspective, as individuals, with all the changes happening around us, how do people cope with that, and what do you recommend they do? Because you can look at things in two different ways. You can say, my job is not here tomorrow, the way things are tracking, or what can I do to learn to skill up to actually add more value to the community, the industry? How do people need to think? Because as things change and evolve really quickly, there's always the positive and the negative, and it's what you focus on anyway in terms of how you sort of come about it and how you feel about it. What would you say to people that are sort of in that bracket that need to think about mindset and how they're focusing on the change that's around them?
Yeah, a terrific and a pretty complicated question to answer. But if you look at two things, first of all, our amygdala is a very interesting little part of our brain. It's actually a twin organ in our brain, and it's got a right part of the brain and a left part. And because of our evolution, where we've been our safety and security is trained to be fight or flight, or just sit and avoid.
Yes.
Pardon? Freeze. Yes, freeze.
Freeze. Yes.
Yeah, the amygdala has an inbuilt bias towards negativity, so that the right side part of the amygdala is about 70% biased towards negativity, and the left part is about 30% toward positivity. And the memories are stored there in the amygdala and in the hippocampus, and as a result, the starting answer to your mindset question is we need to overcome the fear, the threat, the, hey, what's this doing to me? And we have to literally move the right brain, fear and freeze and running away and that thinking to an adapting, saying, I accept I have to change. It's like when there's a death, there's that process of denial, and then, you move through grieving, and eventually you move to acceptance. So that process of death, Kubla Khan taught us. Kubla, that's not a name. It's a name like Kubla Khan. That famous person who wrote about the 7 stages of grieving. That's very relevant to the mindset changes that we need to go through. So.
Yeah, I think mindsets it's always a fascinating one. It's one that if you are in business or been in business for quite a while, you see change, you can get sort of kicked in the face a little bit, and it's how you approach things. And one thing I've noticed is the more I work on that area of how I'm thinking, how I'm sort of perceiving what's in front of me, it makes a big difference to how you feel every day, and then what you're delivering and how open you are to the opportunities that are around you. So opening up mindset is probably from the list of things is number one. You can reskill someone if their mindset's open to it. I don't think you can reskill anyone if they're closed to a mindset that is too hard to move on. I'm stuck in my own way. So I think that's a great place to start. And I think everyone needs to start always.
I've developed well over 20 techniques of changing mindsets, and they're all, you don't talk about it, you don't have a long theoretical discussion. You actually experiment with a range of different things that actually changes them. And I'll come back to one big one in a minute that we can all start with. But for me, the most fascinating case at the moment is what I call the divided states of America. We've looked to the United States of America to lead the world with globalization, with supply chains, with, relative peace since the end of the World War II. Now their mindsets are in such turmoil that they've become the divided states of America, and quite about 40% of young millennial Americans believe that there's going to be a new civil war there eventually. So, this mindset issue and the number of times people dig their heels in and, want to go back to the world that doesn't exist anymore is a fundamental issue. The starting point that we can all start with change is actually to practice every day a system of being thankful, being grateful. And if you just simply go to Google while it still exists and Google psychology of gratitude, go to Psychology Today and do the benefits of gratitude, right? And you will find that just simply adopting a mindset, not of problems, oh God, the world's coming to an end, just start with saying, gee, I'm grateful for my wonderful children. I'm grateful for my partner. I think it's fantastic that, I have a business, that I'm glad for my health. Thank God I've still got my eyesight. If once we go through those and then we get a mantra of gratitude, and the science says that any sort of emotions lasts for a maximum of 90 seconds unless we consciously keep it alive. So any negative emotion, mad, sad, bad emotion that just hits us, it lasts for 90 seconds unless we use our mind to keep it alive.
Keep repeating.
Equally,
Press repeat, right?
Exactly. We get on a negative loop. Equally, if we transfer that into a gratitude or a positive, and we get a mantra that lasts 30 seconds. So 90 seconds is the mind, is the emotion. 30 seconds is the thought. If we keep that going for 30 seconds, it actually becomes a permanent imprint in our mind. And that's a hugely important way to change us. So there's many others, but gratitude.
I find it fascinating you're speaking about gratitude today. I was actually watching a video on YouTube about gratitude and the science behind it. And one of them, they did a study which said if you wrote a gratitude journal for a week, they measured the happiness in people and they found that they were 6% happier after a week. It's all based on surveying. But then later on, I think it was a month or two later, they still found those people were happier than they first started, even when they stopped doing it. So it does something scientifically.
Interesting study.
Yeah, interesting study in terms of the mind. And
you're changing the hardwiring of the brain, and you're overcoming the natural, inborn, innate tendency of fear, fight, flight, freezing, and you're moving into, adapting the ability of change.
Yeah, because we all have something to be thankful for. Everybody does. We live in especially people in Australia, live in a country where you've got a roof over your head and got all the opportunity in front of you. And
some of us do.
Sometimes. Some of us do. But I think we sort of forget. And you can be thankful for anything. You can be thankful for a nice day outside. Anything. It doesn't have to be.
But that's the point. Like when we adopt that grateful. I mean, it doesn't even matter who we're saying thanks to. Some people might be saying thanks to the old fella that's up there, but I just say thanks to the cosmos. That's so vital in changing mindsets.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. There's a lot you can do, but that's definitely one of them. Now back to your steep component, because you're quite big on small teams and thinking within small teams. Is that how you feel the future of business will look? Is it small teams of people focusing on single problems? What does it look like for you?
Well, quite clearly, governments in the United Nations and large corporations, large corporations still have a huge part to play in, for example, doing something about global warming and the ecology, doing something about global famine, doing something about the fact that water is becoming the scarcest resource in the world, doing something about the fact that, some of the major river systems in the world are drying up, that, at least 20 of our major cities around the world are sinking into the water table. Like you and I are not well placed to do anything about that. But where you and I and other small business and small groups collaborating together, innovating together, forming small communities, what we first of all can do is we can support and aid each other to change our mindsets. We can support and move and start pooling our resources. So, the resources of 10 small enterprises pooled together, the thinking power, the fact that we've all got, a structure of computers and people and, and connections, and we start to pool that and multiply and leverage that into new ventures and new ideas. That becomes extraordinarily powerful. And one of my heroines is an anthropologist called Margaret Mead, and she studied a number of so-called primitive or developing societies in transition into the modern world. And she said, never doubt that a small group of dedicated people can change the world, for nothing else can. And I you can see that with all the great revolutions around the world, like the 1848 revolutions in Europe, the 1905 revolution in Russia, the 1917 revolution, the now revolution in China. There were discontents and famine and whatever, the French Revolution, that caused the discontent that we're seeing all around the world. But it was a few dedicated revolutionaries that banded together and said, here is the solution, that caused monumental change. So, yes.
It all needs to start from someone, doesn't it? Someone, some group.
There's always a spark,
yes.
The way you see it in movies.
Yes.
Yes.
Then you have to fan that flame and then it grows.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So we're living in really, really exciting times. The Chinese say they're interesting times, but that's also the curse. The Chinese greatest curse. May you live in interesting times.
all times are always interesting and always changing. I think that's the fascination of what's around us. It feels like every moment there's something new that's released or something innovative that's coming on, and it's exciting. It's just to sort of attract that and understand what you could do with it, what that's going to mean for humanity, society. There's a lot of unknown too. I don't really know where we're going to be in 10 years, but I'm sure people are predicting where we might get to. But predictions are sometimes not so true. So it's definitely, like, people talk about going into more of a socialist society. What are your thoughts on that, Neville? I'll pick that one with you in terms of, everything's given to us. And what do you think about that?
Well, again, I think that's an absolutely crucial subject. There's a couple of major misapprehensions about capitalism and socialism. The first is that there is one brand of capitalism, i.e. American-style capitalism, whereas in fact there's always been various brands of capitalism, and there exists. Australian capitalism is very different from American capitalism, and European capitalism is very different from both of us. So, first of all, capitalism is not a single, homogenous worldview and practice. It has common elements, but the way it's implemented is very different. Equally, socialism is the same, and communism has had many, many variations. Look at Australia. We are both a capitalist and a socialist economy and a society. Yeah. We have both elements. We have the Liberal Party representing, that the sort of capitalist business side of life, and we've got the Labor Party representing more, the worker, the social change, social revolution. That works. That blend is something that works extraordinarily well and dynamically. But when we get people on the extreme left or people right, they sort of turn that into, They turn it into a debate that doesn't take us anywhere. Now, having said that, it's interesting that Australia is soon going to have every government, state, national and and state is going to be Labor. New South Wales will soon move to being Labor.
Yeah, we're turning to Labor. Well, every one of them, yes.
Yeah, why? Because the whole, all of us know that we have to give more attention to society, to community, to our health system, to our education system, to being better as people, of collaborating more,
Yes.
rather than how much money we've got. Now it's a shift that will happen, is happening. Whether the extreme capitalists like it or not, because that's the social need at the moment. But it's not a betrayal of capitalism. It's not a move to communism. It's a blending of society and the individual. Blending it.
It's a bit of evolving. It is evolving, right? So,
yes,
as we see what's going around us. But yeah, and it's a fair point you've raised. Every state will be Labor, including federal, the way we're tracking. So, there's a shift there in terms of what people are expecting.
And that's the wonder of our democracy, mate. Only 6% of the world has a true democracy. Where you can have a transition of government that's peaceful, and a shift in the ideological content of the government, a move in one direction and then back again, and coming back into the middle all the time. We are one of the few true democracies in the world, and America is not. America is a theocracy. Is a oligarchy. Really, it puzzles me, that one.
Fascinating. Trump. Do you think he's going to get back in?
Oh, no way. No. That would not be on.
Crazy world over there. That's all.
I'm going to Mars. I'm going to migrate to Mars if he does. But I'll be on one of Elon Musk's.
Yes,
Even
shoot
that
up there. Sounds like a plan.
I'll practice cryogenics. Yes, go into hibernation.
I love it.
And come back later. Yeah.
We talk to a lot of businesses and founders of businesses, and predominantly focused on technology as a podcast.
Yep.
What would you say to people that are venturing into or are part of businesses and seeing the transformations around them? What do you say their next steps are over the next 12, 24 months? What should they be thinking about, Neville?
Oh, wow. You mean a startup?
Startup-y, or I know I'm in a business and I need to evolve something because I'm stagnating or the times are changing. What should I be focusing on as a business?
Well, I think this comes back to very strongly the values. One, Albert Einstein once said basically something like, be a man of value, not a man of success. So he put that, the dichotomy that we've had in our society. You can either be a community-minded good person, or you can be, chasing wealth and chasing your own independence. The first thing I think is what we're seeing in the millennials, who are the new generation now of startups and whatever. We're clearly seeing that they don't see that dichotomy. They see that what it's all about is being a person of value and a person of achievement. But they also see that many of the things that you and I have taken for granted in terms of ownership and possessions and wealth is something that of itself is no longer the raison d'etre of life.
No, correct.
And, so, when I'm talking with the millennials, I start with their values, and I start with, what they would like to achieve, both, and not seeing a conflict between those two things, which means that many of the businesses that they will be starting and are starting will have a sort of a community type flavour to it, rather than the sort of independent flavour that you and I have spent our life building, if you can see the difference. And
I can. I get that.
And I'd foster
That's a fascinating take, and it leads into all your programs that you're designing at the moment. in terms of that
Yeah.
community flavour, connecting with multiple groups, different
It's like
walks of life coming
life is
together.
life is too complicated. Like I've designed 16 total ventures. Now, how the hell would I go about doing them all myself? Like, that's crazy. There is only
that's
one
impossible.
way. There's only one way I can do that, is working with others, joint venturing them, handing them over to others. I can be the designer, but my gosh, I can't be the implementer. So I can be the grand
Brilliant.
poobah,
You can't. I think if you want to do it all on your own, you can probably focus on one business and do it for 20, 30 years and maybe make that successful. I think what you've done and been a part of so many ventures, that's to jump from one to the other in 2 or 3 years. It's probably impossible to get some success. I would
It's
imagine on your
not
own.
because you're not
possible.
on your own.
Yeah,
You get
correct.
the assistance, and
Yes,
otherwise you've only got so much time to focus.
correct.
Yes,
Neville,
exactly.
always a pleasure. If anyone wants to learn about your programs and what you're putting together and the Sleep Renaissance, where can they find it out? Just at nevillechristie.com, or is there any other resource to get in contact with you?
Yeah, look, that website's a little bit out of date, but you can start at nevillechristie.com. There's a means of contacting me there, which is either through email or my phone. Talk with me. And, I'm unfolding. I launch a new program on Tuesday.
Okay.
There's a whole program of launching, so it's an evolution rather than, something that's already arrived.
Oh, we're always evolving, aren't we, Neville? We always are. Thank you, Neville. Yeah, thanks for joining us for the DevReady
Thank you.
Podcast once again. Really appreciate your time, and let's keep the episode maybe a bit closer than almost 100 apart. So yeah, thank you for joining us, Neville. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my great pleasure. Thanks, fellas. Next time.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.